republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And what is your desire with the consent agenda?
So before you approve the consent agenda, I did give Christine, I don't know if she passed along, there were just a few amendments to the January 25th minutes, just clerical errors.
Okay.
Yeah, they're immediately following the January 18th minutes.
Okay, and the changes in red?
Yes.
Yeah, so I didn't identify the municipal officer, and then I had proved instead of provided, and we changed retainer to holdback, so. Goodness.
I thought I had another request about, on that one. I'm good.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Please raise your hand. And the approval of the warrants as well? Motion to approve. Motion to approve. Second?
Second that?
Any discussion? All in favor? The next select board meeting will be Thursday, February 15th, 5:30, here at the town hall. And the first business item is the investment committee recommendation. Do you have an update on that?
I do. The investment committee met this afternoon. There's not a representative here tonight because they're not making a formal recommendation. When an investment matures, it moves automatically to the money market account. And right now, the money market has the best interest rate, which is 5.6%. So Steve and Paul decided to just leave it in the money market until rates change or another change needs to be made.
In order to make that official, I move that we follow the recommendation of the investment committee and leave the money where it is currently invested. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
What was that rate again, Christine?
5.26%.
Any further discussion? All in favor? The second item of business is, we have had a reply to the question I asked last week at the workshop concerning ex parte communications. And for the record, I want to read the opinion of Mark Bauer into the minutes. And the question is, as rephrased, is our ex parte communications between applicant and a board member regarding a pending abatement request permitted? And Attorney Bauer's reply is no. As a reminder, the Board of Assessors sits in a quasi-judicial capacity when hearing abatement requests. This means that any communications between an applicant for an abatement and a board member must occur during the hearing on the abatement, which must occur at a properly noticed meeting of the Select Board of Assessors. For abatements, the board is sitting as the Board of Assessors. There are several reasons for this rule, including that the ex parte communication is not recorded or made part of the record and therefore cannot form the basis for a decision by the board. Typically, the assessor's agent will assist taxpayers if they need help in filing an abatement request or gaining access to information regarding the assessment. And the second question was how many emails back and forth among board members constitutes a meeting? And Mr. Bauer responds that my opinion is that any communications among board members by email outside of meetings could constitute a public proceeding under the FOAA, therefore requiring public notice and the ability of the public to attend. The exception to this rule is that emails that are sent solely for ministerial purposes, namely scheduling a meeting or informing other members regarding attendance at a meeting, do not constitute a meeting because they do not involve transactions, this is quoted, transactions of any function affecting any or all citizens, end quote, of the town. Therefore, it is possible that even one substantive email exchange among board members about an abatement request or other pending matter could constitute a public proceeding under FOAA. And then,
Do you want to read his response, Madeline, about penalties?
yes, and the question also came up if there are penalties, whether or not there are penalties if an ex parte meeting takes place. And his opinion was that no penalties, there are no penalties per se, but it is not an appropriate practice for administrative decision making. It could be the basis for an appeal of the board's decision as a due process violation, and furthermore, it doesn't allow all decision makers, i.e. the board members, to be operating with the same information. Is there any discussion, comment? Okay, moving on. Business item 3 is Freedom of Access Act, FOAA requests, and a discussion, and we have in our package the draft policy concerning access to public records under the Maine Freedom of Access Act as an attempt to draft a document for people to request information. And we have a sample in our packets. Comments from the board?
I have a couple. So, following our workshop, Christine shared that she was in possession of additional content that pertained to the revaluation process. And I understand one of our townspeople may have asked for it, but I asked for it personally in the office so that I could use that to evaluate what's happening in the town, what's going to be happening tomorrow with Maine Revenue Services. I was denied that access from Christine, which I think inappropriately denied. And then she said it was a Freedom of Information Act component, and I don't believe me asking our town administrator as an employee of the town from an elected official of the town for paperwork, that is by no way a Freedom of Information Act component. And I find it somewhat inappropriate that you would not distribute that information.
In what way is being an elected officer different from being a member of the public when you're asking for documents?
It's a document that I need to do my job to support the town residents, and when we have information necessary for me to do that, I don't think when she tells me I have to wait 5 days for that information, I'm thinking that is actually insubordination versus complying with my request as an elected official. That's how I feel.
Would you like me to respond to that, Madeline?
Yes, there will.
Okay, I think the information is definitely being taken out of context. I said in my email, making a point that even with freedom of access requests, we have 5 days to respond, which is true in the law. I
Yes.
wasn't saying that elected officials are the same or different. I just said even with freedom of access.
Well, I
I wasn't denying the information. I was taking a beat so that I could digest the fact that we had new information. And, you know, with the knowledge that Steve Sullivan is coming tomorrow to review everything, I thought it would be appropriate to wait until any additional information went out into the community. And I am confident that if I gave the information out, that it would be disseminated. So I checked in with Kathy and Madeline, and they said, yes, please hold off on providing the information, and that's what I did.
But see, I don't, because I have your email here,
Yeah,
and it says, would you like me to release the additional information today, or would you allow me to at the discretion to hold off until after the review? Even with the Freedom of Information Act's request, we have 5 days to respond.
so that's exactly what I just said.
Well, you really didn't. And I asked a direct question as an elected official to help me do my job, that I don't feel I have to wait 5 days if you're in holding information that's pertinent to the town, to keep that for me. And I'm not done. And for you to tell me that it's a Freedom of Information Act, I find that to be really an act of insubordination. That's how I feel. And I think it was inappropriate for you to do that. And then to go and ask the other board members what they thought as well on what my request was. I don't get involved in what they request. Whatever they request is up to them. And I think whatever I request is up to me. And I believe that was for me to be able to do my job. And because we can't talk amongst ourselves, I don't have the opportunity to share the concern with any one of them. And so I find it inappropriate to reach out to them quantifying my request.
I hear your concern. Further discussion, I think, of this issue is a matter of personnel and should be dealt with in executive session. If you're charging insubordination, that certainly is a personnel issue.
And if I may, it's really not the agenda item.
Yes.
We should be focusing on the information that our public access officer provided at the request of the chair, to put some information in writing about how to request freedom of access.
Excuse me, I would like to speak. My request was made for a formal way of requesting, whether it be written or verbal, because in order to comply with the access to public records, it seems to me that we need to have the specific information, the raw data that may or may not be within the TRIO program at this point. It seems to me is not useful. You've been complaining that the book that was provided from TRIO is not useful to you. It seemed to me that it is appropriate for us to have specific requests for specific information. Otherwise, I could walk in and say to the public information officer, I would like to have to read all of the records of the town of West Bath since 1844, which would not be particularly useful. If I wanted to know what happened in the select board meeting in February of 1844, that might be much more useful. So in order to have better record keeping for freedom of information requests, I asked for this policy to be developed. I don't ask for it to be enacted this evening, because I think we need some time to digest and read it and discuss it. But I think we have more and more requests for public records, and have an orderly process for processing those. Makes good sense administratively to me.
So Madeline, I don't appreciate you using the term complaining. My position is not a complaint, it's my position, and I take offense to that. And I actually, I'm going to take a really bold move right now. And I'm actually going to move that our current chair is removed from the position. I'd like to make a motion that our current chair is removed from the position, and we revert back to our prior chair of last session with Kathy LaValle, because I feel that our communication is very stressed, and we had a much more harmonious board when Kathy was the chair of it. And I'm tired of fighting with you all the time.
Is there a second?
Kathy, I'm sorry I just sprung that on you. I don't know how you feel about it. But I don't like the environment that we're working in every time. I really don't.
I don't like the environment, but I don't think me being chair is going to be any different. I think that we have a problem among the board. We, three strong personalities with three very strong different positions, and we need to figure out how to get along.
Would you consider taking the chair if it was an option?
I don't think it's the right thing to do.
So there's no second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
And I guess if we're going to try and stick to agenda items, which we keep falling back to that, we didn't follow that at all for the workshop, and I received a lot of complaints about people putting forth the effort to submit their questions, and none of those were addressed. The only question that was brought up was your request on how communication happens, which didn't follow policy for submission, which was a week before at 3 p.m., and we ignored all the questions as the chair, and you submitted only your question to the audience, and I think that workshop was not the time and place for that you didn't lead us to answer any of the questions that were submitted that evening.
And before we adjourned, I asked if there were other questions and comments, and that would have been a time for you to bring up that concern.
But the only question that was posed was yours that was off the record and not an appropriate time submission.
There have been serious questions about ex parte communications, and therefore I felt it was appropriate. If I was off topic, we could have this we could.
We're
bring it
just
up
going
on
to stick to a
the
policy. Whatever it is, let's stick to it.
I think this is a personnel issue, and that we should be in executive sessions discussing this.
Thank you. Questions of the Freedom of Access proposal. Do we have any comments on that tonight?
I'd like to review it.
I'd like to review it too, but I'm really happy to see, I've always been, my thought process has always been, it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. When you put it in writing, it will give us a record of what the townspeople are looking for, and maybe we can decrease some of what they're looking for by coming up with the answers. You won't have to duplicate if 3 or 4 people are asking for the same thing, you'll already have it. So I do like the idea of reform, and you being able to track what you're getting together all the time.
And of course, according to FOA, you don't have to put your request in writing, but I think a lot of people like to have a form as a place to start. Putting forward a request without knowing how to put in the request can be challenging for some people. So,
And I think
to be clear,
we're accountable too. They can say,
Yeah.
look, here's the form.
well, exactly, someone telling me something and me saying, okay, I'll get back to you, is a totally acceptable FOA request consultation, but yeah, some people like the tangible thing, and I can make a copy and I can write received on it.
And there's less opportunity for misinterpretation of the request.
So if I come in and ask for something that's a public record, and I don't want to fill out the request, would you then be able to make a request?
Yeah, if you didn't want to write anything down, I would just make a note of it. And if I wrote your name and you said I want to be anonymous, I would probably throw it in the shirt bin and start again with anonymous request and ask for how are we going to get in contact with each other? Are you going to call me to check in? It would be like that. The policy I drafted came from Old Orchard Beach. Most of the language comes directly from the statute, and the only thing I changed was adding my information, taking out city manager, and plugging in town administrator. So it's almost verbatim from them. They've been using it and it works. I like that it's fairly simple but pretty clear. And I think the sooner the better on getting it in. Just as I think we've gotten to a point where we're getting a lot of questions, and it's good to have a procedure, so it's more consistent.
I think I'd like to add to the procedure, or a thought of it, we talked about, I think last year, is creating a communication binder. So all communication that comes into the town, it's put into a binder, you know, by month, so that if someone has a question on what was sent, what was received, I think that is also something that should be readily available for review from our folks in the town, as well as us.
Further comments about the freedom of access requests?
Well, I think it's also good too, because I think if you get the same question twice, you can just look at it, if it's in the binder, make sure they don't get two different answers.
And I think it'll help us if we see and readily see all communication.
Business item 4, again, a draft of a proposal for making public possibilities of addressing the select board clearer, and so that the select board could conduct our business efficiently and effectively, while giving all members of the public a chance to speak. And again, this is intended as a suggestion, a proposal to be acted upon at a later date.
So this proposal, I don't know if you watched the city of Bath in their city council, but this is kind of the proposal they have. And they are very professional, and some of the stuff that's been happening here doesn't happen there. So I, for one, suggested that we have some procedures, because we look totally out of control, and it looks like more like personalities rather than dealing with issues. And I think Bath does a great job with their meetings.
The highlights for the public is that any person would be permitted to speak after being recognized, and they would, a speaker would name their residence, and if they're representing an organization, for instance, the Historical Society or one of the committees, that would be identified as part of the public record. And if somebody was going to reinforce a point made by another person, they would say, I agree with so-and-so about such and such, rather than making a long speech or even a short speech. And that comments made by a member of the public during a select board meeting should be limited to expressions of opinions or concerns regarding the agenda item under discussion, or to direct questions pertaining to any question or comment raised by the agenda item. So there's a fairly wide leeway. Questions and comments directed to the chair, through the chair, and debate of an agenda item would not be allowed during the meeting between members of the public and the select board. Comments would be directed to the select board would have the discussion. And no public remark should be allowed which has the effect of embarrassing or attacking the character of any individual or select board member or any organization that may be the subject of an agenda. And one of the changes that would be large for us is that all individuals addressing the select board would be asked to limit their remarks to 5 minutes or less, and that no individual would be permitted to address the select board more than twice on any agenda item. And that would, I think, help us get through the agendas, which are complicated sometimes, in a more effective and efficient manner. But, again, this is not for action tonight. This is to introduce the motion and to open ourselves up to discussions for what would be sufficient and appropriate for us, if any.
Are we talking about it now or waiting till later?
I think it probably would be useful to digest it and have it as an agenda item, marked up and with comments and changes brought as part of the discussion when we're ready to move on it. Do you have comments at this point?
No, I'll do it later.
Any comments from the public? Town administrator's report.
There is a reminder in your packet about the County Budget Advisory Committee caucus. That's going to take place at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, February 6th. We're part of District 3, and they have one public representative position that is open.
So,
This is just so everybody knows, this is where a lot of our taxes go. It's a huge, huge cost and budget, and if anybody is interested in being part of that, it would be much appreciated. It's a huge budget. It makes ours look really small.
and it's a big part of our budget.
It's a
So,
significant part of our budget, nearly 20%.
The town attorney and the attorney for Saginaw County completed their review of the tower lease, and they agree on acceptable language contained in the amended lease. The planning board will be reviewing the application at their February 13th meeting. The town attorney confirmed that approval for the project may be granted conditionally pending a town meeting vote. The lease agreement and the accompanying amendment to the solar lease will be on your February 15th agenda. And at that time, I think it would be probably a good idea to arrange a special town meeting so that we don't hold up the project unnecessarily. Because everybody's ready to move, so.
Is that the trees that being cut, is that part of the solar? It's being pretty well stripped
I
back
don't
there.
know. I don't know. I'm not sure.
You can see it from Route 1.
Maybe that's the road opening.
I'm guessing it's the road
possibly?
driveway.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, the road opening. Because they did get their permit from the state. And there's also the main DOT work plan in your packet.
I don't see the reoccurring hole at the end of Berry's Mill on here.
I'm happy that the state road culvert is on there, as promised previously.
Yes, yeah, at least the engineering portion is slated for 2024 for the culvert. And,
Is that down by the parking?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that's moving forward. And the A2K, or the Androscoggin to Kennebec Trail project, is also moving forward. So they'll be doing some work with that this year, engineering work.
Carly, can you put this up on the town website? Because
Yeah,
I think it's very interesting that in 2023, we had 14 trees removed and 16 emergency event responses.
And there is a current one out that this will replace, it's under the roads tab for anyone that's looking for it.
Yes. Fascinating reading about the roads.
So have we added the, that, are they addressing, I should say, that hole that won't go away again?
Is it on the list? I haven't.
It's not.
No, it's not on the list.
It's just gonna happen, it's, all it do is move 10 feet farther down the road and rear its ugly head again.
The perpetual spring. I think that we now know the secret to why the witch spring is called the witch spring. It has supernatural power, reappears in spite of all efforts to eliminate it. We used to have a pretty good luck with MDOT contacting our representatives. Can you alert Allison to the recurring mysterious spring?
Yes.
And maybe we can get that one. Maybe there is a solution to this.
Where are we on the, with the state? I guess we haven't had the comp meeting yet. We have that back. If we have to have a special meeting for the lease, we can do that with the comp plan.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. I think Max has made some changes to satisfy the state requirements. So we'll be going over that at the meeting on the 20th.
The comp plan meeting's on the 20th?
I think so. Is that the right date?
February 20th.
What day of the week is that?
That's a Tuesday. Tuesday
Yeah,
after President's
that's
Day.
correct.
Okay.
It's President's Day. Are you open?
The Tuesday after President's Day.
Oh, yep, it is.
20th. Assuming nobody else gets sick.
Is that 6 o'clock here?
Yes.
Will we have Max's edits before that meeting?
Yeah, he usually sends them out at least a few days ahead of the meeting.
Anything else for your report?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, meeting as the Board of Assessors. Discussion concerning upcoming consultation with Maine Revenue Services. Which takes place tomorrow at 9. You have a comment, Christine?
Yeah, I reached out to Mark Bauer about the meeting and who should attend, why I should really call it a consultation. And he said in his response that if there shouldn't just be one select board member at the meeting. And if there's more than one select board member or board of assessors member at the meeting, then it would be a public proceeding. And that it goes back to the ex parte conversation, where if one select board member is receiving information aside from the other select board members, that is inappropriate. So his opinion was that it's administrative in nature and it should just be staff and consultants.
I will be there. I'm not going to not be there. I don't have to say anything, I don't have to communicate, but I will actually sit there while all that's going on.
I'm really uncomfortable with that. I think it's fair that the staff have some time to take in information and work with the consultant.
I'm really uncomfortable not being there also, so I plan on being there.
Well, then I will be there, so that makes it a public meeting.
Well, how are we going to accommodate a public meeting? We don't know what information we'll be bringing out or,
We should also have 24 hours notice for a public meeting.
you know, this is really awkward. It's really,
It seemed like
it isn't acceptable that I am not allowed to do my job. Nobody has asked to be in an audit when Bill Brewer is here.
no. And this,
It's the same thing.
to my mind.
No one comes to the workers' comp audits. I deserve an opportunity to do my job without being under the microscope. And Steve Sullivan is going to provide a written response anyway. That is what the select board, as a group, should be reviewing and acting on.
I can appreciate your position on that, Christine, but to be frankly honest, I am the one who reached out to Steve Sullivan in the first place. and I have a significant concern on how this process is going. And I don't have to say a word, but I plan on being there. And I think it's wrong, Madeline, you are trying to negate that because of your opinion on not wanting anyone there. I think that's part of the reason why I would like Kathy to be the chair.
I would appreciate a vote from the board on whether or not a select board member may attend at a non-public meeting.
And I would also, at this point, want the public record to show that I also reached out to Steve Sullivan for assistance in solving these issues.
Following my initial request to get him involved.
Oh,
I was
come
the
on,
initial
come on,
person.
ladies, come on.
Seriously.
I've just about had enough.
Thank you.
Okay, I am not going to show up to work tomorrow wondering if Suzanne's going to be in the room. I need some kind of a vote tonight.
I got Nikki too.
Mike?
How can you continue a workshop? And when you state that you will meet with the state, how is that not a public activity? And yes, if somebody wants to watch a town audit, that is a public activity.
Audits are
We
not a
have
public
report-
activity.
We have requested for 7 months answers. We have not gotten answers. We have been told that Trio does tricks that it does not do. And you are the town administrator, Christine, you are not the town assessor. The town assessor is 1, 2, 3. Your function is not to assess 1, 2, 3.
I never claimed to be the assessor.
Then it is not a town administrative function for the town administrator to act as a town assessing agent. That is 1, 2, 3 assessors. You are not one of them.
I never claimed to be.
That you are claiming that it is an administrative function of the town to meet with main revenue.
Reviewing what we have is an administrative function. It's the exact same thing as the financial audit. It's the
Yes.
same thing, and this is not an extension of the workshop. This is a separate consultation with a professional.
It is a meeting with 1, 2, 3 assessors where the request was made and main revenue said to the 1, 2, 3 assessors that they would come here to see what the 1, 2, 3 assessors need, not the 1, 2, 3, 4.
That was not said at the workshop when I requested a consultation.
Well, so if you're so, I'm clearly the one that has the most concerns here. I think if you want them to be put to rest, Madeline, the best position would be for let me to sit there and observe, to put my concerns to rest, because I'm the one who's brought most of them forward. I think it's appropriate, if only one's going to be there, it should be me.
I don't,
Our town attorney said one should not be there. It either has to be at least 2 or a public meeting. You know, none or 2 in a public proceeding.
So I thought Steve was coming to look at your files, Trio, all of that, to see what's there, what's not there, and then we were gonna have the opportunity to meet with him after.
yes, that was my understanding as well.
Yeah, I forgot, he did say he would come back and meet with you. He did say
To
that.
explain to us what he found,
Yes.
didn't find.
And it would be in writing
Right.
also.
Right. And to me, that is more than sufficient.
Because again, I don't think we can move forward until we do know. Because he was gonna give us advice on what we need, how we need to get it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
If we sit here and argue and we can't have the meeting tomorrow, we're gonna be that much far behind again. We're not getting anywhere. Okay.
Yes.
I find that perfectly reasonable. There's only one Trio, it's not down here, there is not room. If you have a separate meeting with Steve Sullivan, I would find that to be an activity for the assessing board.
I think you
Yes.
have to.
And that to me would be the time that would be appropriate, again, to have the meeting be public as we reviewed that and took whatever decisions needed to be taken
I
at that
think
time.
the town attorney might object on that basis, on the basis that it is the potential for a legal act.
Yeah, especially if his advice, both of their advice becomes you need to take the
Right.
assessor to court,
Right.
or not.
Right.
Don't
So
know
as
what.
much as I'd like to cut myself out, I probably should.
Yes, thank you, appreciate that. So,
So you're saying you need to have 2 or none tomorrow? 'Cause I thought you said it was 1 only.
no, that's what
No,
Mr.
I did
Butler
not
said.
say that. I said we cannot have just one, because that one select board member would be receiving information that a quorum of the select board wasn't privy to. If we have at least 2 select board members, it becomes a public proceeding. And then a group of people will be following us around from room to room, trying to figure out what we're looking at. I find that unacceptable at this point. I think it's better that we wait until we have something in writing so that the assessors can have another public meeting to share the findings with Steve Sullivan in the room.
I still would like to be there.
I'm going to attempt a procedure based on what you suggested, Kathy, that the meeting be with the administrative staff of the town, and Steve Sullivan, and was somebody from Parker going to be here?
Yes, when I contacted Bob about the workshop, I let him know that we were having the workshop. When I found out that Steve Sullivan might be in attendance, because I thought that was fair for him to know. And when I talked to him that day, I called him on Monday, the 22nd, prior to the workshop. And when I talked to him, I mentioned the sales analysis, that we were looking for a sales analysis. So he said, okay, and apparently he told Jess, because Jess called me on Wednesday and said, hey, can you send me the sales data that is on your server? And I was like, okay, I didn't know what she was talking about. And I said, can you tell me how to find it? So she told me where to find it on the server. It was in an Excel spreadsheet, and I sent it to her. And then she got back to me on Thursday morning, the day of the workshop, and she said, okay, this is what we provided so far. And then she went on to say if we needed something comparing the sales to the new values, that she could provide that also, but they hadn't done that yet. So I contacted Steve Sullivan and I said, would it be helpful to you if someone from Parker Appraisal was here, so that, Jess knows that part of TRIO better than we do. And she also knows what they've already provided. And he said, yes, that would be very prudent to have Jessica here so that she could point out help him understand what we do have and what we don't have. And then when it's determined that we're missing information, that she will be able to, provide us information about when we could receive that.
Could you remind me of Jessica's last name?
West Haver.
So that's news to me that Parker's going to be there, which makes it even more important that I participate, because those are the folks that I'm most concerned with. And I think it's very important that we're there and present during that interview.
So what you were talking about, Kathy, was having this town staff, Steve Sullivan, Jessica Westhaver, review the data issues. Issue report. And that would be written and given also in person at a public meeting. Is that the substance of what you're proposing?
So you knew prior to this meeting that Parker was gonna be there? Because I find that disturbing that that wasn't shared as well. I think it's important that, I think it's a huge disservice to this community that we don't observe this process. I do. I don't feel like we've been given all the information yet, and I'd like to hear that.
This is public comment time.
Can you
Yeah.
hold on just a minute?
Just want to make sure we didn't go back to boards.
Well, no, we're still under business item
We're still
5.1, discussion concerning the upcoming consultation.
So,
This is what we agreed upon last time. It's
Right.
from meeting to meeting, we don't even stick to the stuff that we said.
But now Parker's there, which changes the whole dichotomy of the meeting, and even more so important that we participate in it, Kathy. I really feel it's very, very important.
I think sometimes, Suzanne, that you get so involved and so talkative that we can't really hear what's being said anyways, and you don't take in what they're saying, and you kind of,
I don't plan on speaking tomorrow. I plan on observing.
I find that hard to believe.
and we have the advice of our attorney that one.
Yes, our attorney said that one select board member should not be in the room.
So, I move that the meeting tomorrow,
Do we want to hear from just before we
Can- let's-
second something?
I will take your advice. Yes, yes.
Couple of clarifications. They are not saying that Trio contains the spreadsheet.
No, Trio doesn't contain the spreadsheet, it's an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, which has been requested for 7 months now.
Yeah, I didn't know it was there.
We have gone through, as a town, a considerable amount of agony, because the question was also asked in July by Juanita. 2 questions. Where is your sales, and where is your neighborhood definition? The answer was, if you don't like the answer, appeal it. And there was no answer. That makes me extremely suspicious of private appraisal. A little suspicious of why it was not clear when you were having discussion of those selectmen. By the way, private appraisal will be here. Kind of funny that it was held back. I do say that sarcastically.
I'd like to.
Back onto the subject.
Can,
Are you getting neighborhood analysis at the same time? Because this is the other and grades. This is the information that has been requested.
and that was part of the discussion that was part of the workshop, and I believe that Steve Sullivan is aware of that, so I'm pretty sure that that question will be answered, or asked anyway. And Christine, could you make a particular note of that to make sure?
Yes, I already did.
Okay.
And I'd also like to know, if there's a spreadsheet that's been there for 7 months, I'd actually like to know the date it was recorded in the system. I want to make sure it wasn't after the fact, and that it was actually sitting there for 7 months, versus being compiled after the fact since we've been asking for it.
So when you guys meet tomorrow,
Well, because you see this evolve.
I think we need a list of the things we need to know. While you guys are here, get them all written down, and when we get the results from Steve, those questions need to be answered. So, do we have the grades here? Do we have the market analysis? Do we have, and if we don't, why? And I think it needs to be written down, we need to hold them accountable, because we keep coming back to the same questions. So what is the
Steve
answer?
Sullivan know what we need? Why do
Well,
we need a list?
Because we never get all the answers. We always forget something, omit something, don't ask something, and then we sit in front of this group and we don't have the answers.
Which is why I want to be there tomorrow, Kathy, because if we're looking, if he's going to sit there, which is the first time I'm hearing tonight, there's a spreadsheet from 7 months ago. I actually don't have the confidence that that's true, and I feel that that could have been a supplemental addition to the server remotely to make sure that it was present when we're looking at so many things. I don't trust Parker Appraisal right now, to be frankly honest. And I want to make sure that as these things evolve, and I'd love to be proven wrong, but I don't have the confidence that we're going to get this and all of it be divulged.
We
on
may
the up and
not
up.
need something, and Steve may say we don't need it, but if they're still asking for it,
Okay, that's a fair point.
And we have several records of what the questions are. So while Mr. Sullivan is here, can we have those gone through, just make sure that all of those questions that have been
even if
asked
the answer
previously.
is, I
Probably
can't
not.
answer it.
Yeah, probably not all of the questions that we
Right.
received over the.
But no, information, do we have this information, that information? We don't have to have the answers, we just need to know if we have the information, and if not, we can work on, maybe we need to get this piece next year, or,
The question really is, do we have the information that we need to be able to continue the revaluation and assessment process? And that's the legal question, I think.
And I think a lot will be divulged, even, and Kathy, I've sat in, when we were supposed to not participate, we were under guidance from Christine saying our town attorney didn't want us at, I forget what the workshop was, because they didn't want us to speak. I didn't speak at that, I sat there and observed, and I'm prepared to do that tomorrow. My concern is, as we see things evolve tomorrow, there'll be questions asked that we may or may not have thought of, that help us understand where the next steps are in this process. And I'm very concerned that I feel that we're missing the opportunity to learn some of the other elements that we're unaware of by not participating tomorrow.
If the town attorney suggests that it's an ex parte meeting or a public meeting, then we need to go on the basis of the attorney's advice.
my concern, if this meeting doesn't happen tomorrow,
We're further and further
Yeah.
behind. So if we have the town administrative staff, Steve Sullivan, Jessica Westhaver, they review the data, identify issues, submit to us a written report and meet with us with a written report and personal responses. Is that sufficient? Given what we know at this point.
No.
I'm asking Kathy at this point. I
Oh, I guess.
I will ask you. I am trying to develop this.
even if we have more questions afterwards, at least we've got this far. We've got to move ahead. We're stuck.
Right.
We're never going to resolve any of this.
So, have I identified the things that you were asked for? And what is it that you are afraid that we are not going to get?
I want to know as he goes through every element of the process, when you say there's stuff on the server, I want to know when that stuff was added to the server. We've been trying for as Mr. Hennessy stated, for 7 months to ask these questions, and now miraculously it's there. I don't feel confident that that was not an after-the-fact entry. So I want to know every timeline when this data was put into the server, because I'm pretty confident that Parker Appraisal still has remote access to our server, which also makes it concerning that they're not adding elements that we've been asking for all along.
They currently do not have access to our server.
So how did that spreadsheet get on the server?
It got on there when they were done with the revaluation.
So,
I want to know when all of that data was entered.
you would like, insofar as possible, to ascertain when the data was put into Trio.
Every report, if he's pulling the comps, when the comps were there. I want to know when the comps were there. I want to know what the comps are. Is it how many per property? How many comps were submitted by each property? That's important. You're supposed to have at least 12.
So, insofar as information is available,
So every piece of that, it's important we get the boundaries of what's been put in there. How are what are the neighborhoods? What do they establish out of the neighborhoods? What are the boundaries of the neighborhoods? Where are the waterfront? Are you writing it down? I don't know, so I want to make sure that's asked.
Christine is writing that down. And I believe those questions have been asked in that compendium of questions that we.
Well, but my question is, where is it? And my question is, when was it provided? I want to know each time frame.
We get that, so you want the date of the
Please
information?
don't cut me off.
Excuse me, do you have, what else would you like to add? You've stated a couple of times that you want the information, the date it was entered.
I want to know the value, I want to know the gradients, how they were established, what are the categories for them? I want to know the waterfront changes, how that pertains to each neighborhood. An overall question is, why was everyone converted? It seems like there was a significant conversion of title to deep water on a lot of property cards. Why did that happen? What did they use to change classifications on the assets in the community? Based upon what the historic trend had been? I know they have their own formula they can use, but it seems like they changed everything in the community and then didn't give substantiations to what their methodology was.
I think Mr. Sullivan was going to address that question of methodology, but,
Well, I guess why did everything change in the neighborhood and then on the card? I don't understand, because if they went out to the properties, how did they determine in their mindset why something should convert to deep water? What did they use that's different than what we had as our maps? Because it seems to be a problem. I don't see that.
Can I ask a question? I don't understand what the, 4, 3, or 5, 3, what is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? What are those classifications? That's all I want to know.
that will be forthcoming, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Mike?
Neighborhoods are in there, grades are in there, but what you don't have is the ability to explain it, because you don't have the Rosetta Stone that tells you what a B is, and that's Trio stuff after the fact. You need verbiage before.
The definitions.
That's what's missing.
We need all the definitions. Where are those?
The waterfront is the crucial question. And what I want to understand is how and when they decided, how low does the tide go? And without that information of how you got there, you cannot do your function. And a good CMA cannot do a legitimate function. Because you need to know their methodology. You need to know how they determined acreage.
So the methodology.
Whether they used 10 feet for waterfront, or whether they used 100, whether they used peripheral, what was their methodology, so you can speak the language. And Trio's not going to speak the language.
And am I correct or incorrect in presuming that Steve Sullivan is going to understand those?
He probably does. He probably understands the question more than he knows that we don't have the answer, that we don't have the question.
Right, he understands what is
If
needed.
we ask the question, he'll have an answer.
So he understands what we're looking for.
No, he has an answer if we can tell him what we're looking for. The other way around.
Okay. So,
And to be frank, I'm not sure he is done. He worked in the assessor's office, doesn't work me, he worked at Trio. He's worked with Trio as he audits other towns.
yeah,
But that doesn't get into the detail of how did you calculate acreage and how did you calculate waterfront That's not done in the state audit, and I don't believe he has done, he's worked in an assessor's office, but I believe it was a large office. It doesn't mean that he necessarily did that analysis.
But Parker should be able to answer that.
If we ask a question, that's the problem. We have to make sure that these questions are asked, which is why I think someone should be there tomorrow.
You do not want a blow-off answer that says it's in trio, because that's a blow-off answer.
I'm reasonably sure that Mr. Sullivan is not going to allow questions to be blown up.
Mr. Sullivan is a state employee. Mr. Sullivan is sticking his neck way, way out.
Yeah, he is.
And he's got to be very careful, and you've got to give him a cover while you're getting the information. And I don't think he's going to get it without one of these, at least one of the assessors there. And that's not an ex parte conversation. If the answer is one, that's not ex parte.
According to Mr. Bauer, it is.
No, if it's one, I'd like to have that reread, because the statement is two.
So, Kathy,
Do you have Mr. Bauer's email can you read that section on what he said on participation again?
I said that you were asking to be at the meeting.
Can you read it verbatim?
Yes. I said, please see the following email exchange concerning this Friday's consultation with Maine Revenue Services. Suzanne is insisting that she be able to attend the meeting with Steve Sullivan. My view is that the consultation is an administrative matter, similar to an audit, and that individual select board members should not be present unless the select board votes to appoint one member to attend. Is there any legal reason why I must allow Suzanne or any other member of the board to attend? And his response was, I would be concerned about her having information that the other two select persons, assessors, don't. So my advice is that you either post it as a meeting and at least two select persons, assessors attend, or not attend.
I think two
It
should
was
attend.
pretty clear.
Then two should attend. I think you should
Then
attend.
it's a public meeting.
We can't do it.
Then it's a public meeting. What if we have 10 other people following us around from room to room, looking at it?
So when did you get that email from
24
him?
hours notice.
Right.
So when did you get that email from him?
I got it Monday.
So why wouldn't you share that, knowing that we needed 24 hours notice of the board?
Because it's something that the board needs to talk about as a body.
No, see, Christine, this is where I think that we were given, if we don't tell them till Thursday, we don't have our 24 hours notice. And I don't think that, but you know what, Christine, seriously.
You're reaching,
I'm not reaching.
and you're back into personnel. Can we focus on this?
Yes, I move that the meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock be with the town administrative staff. Mr. Sullivan representing the Maine Department of Revenue Services, Jessica Westerhaver representing Parker, that they review the data, identify issues, issue a written and verbal report to this select board, and that insofar as possible, all of the questions that have been raised this evening and in the past would be answered to the best of the ability of the persons there gathered.
I would just like to add to that, if we could get a time frame for being able to meet with them. Okay, I mean, I don't want this to go on and on and on, and there's no meeting scheduled.
What we have is, we have the next meeting on February 15th. It can be added language, if at all possible, on the 15th.
Or the 15th, or the soonest available date. And I think that we could make times,
Yes.
Suzanne, would you agree if we had to have another meeting?
I have plenty of time until March before I start traveling for my other job.
Okay, I would consider that a friendly amendment. Do we have a second for that? Ann?
Would it be appropriate for us to sit down with Steve tomorrow before he wrote his report to ask questions? If that made time?
I think that that would be up
No,
to Steve.
it's not part of what we asked him for.
But that doesn't, then he doesn't have to come back and meet with us a second time.
And again, if it's a we, if it's more than one select board member, that's a public meeting.
So I will second Madeline's motion.
Any further comment from the public? Suzanne? Nope. Call for a vote, all in favor of the motion as amended?
Madeline, can you ask for all those opposed?
All opposed? Thank
So I know there's a lot going on here, I will be out of town the 19th through the 26th.
School vacation. Just so I can get it in my head. School vacation.
Obviously, it would be preferable to have all of us there. Okay. Select board comments and announcements. Public comment.
Get rested. Clarification on the ex parte. Obviously, if somebody's going before a board, communication with any one of the assessors is out of line. It's always been true, no problem. Many of what the questions what are being raised are simply questions. And I want to make clear whether it's true that that policy is going to be taken as, I can't ask my assessor a question. Long before it is an item of controversy. Many of these questions were simply, can you explain it? That is not an ex parte conversation with any member of the Board of Assessors, in my view. That's a communication. Until the assessors make a determination that there is a difference of opinion of value, you really are not entering into a quote-unquote semi-legal question. And I'm asking for where you're splitting the line, because any taxpayer should be able to go and ask their assessor to explain this information. Explain my assessment to me. Tell me what that means.
So I think in order to do that, all three of us need to have the same answer. You ask us a question, we all have to have the same answer. Right now, I think you'd get 3 separate answers. That's the problem.
That's better than none. Okay.
Not except when it causes controversy, gets people upset because Madeline said, you're gonna get the abatement. Kathy said you're not. Suzanne said she'll work on it. I mean, we're all gonna be on the same page, and we're not.
I agree, but it's not an ex parte conversation for me to talk to one of my assessors, or eventually the assessor's agent. I'm trying to get how you're reading it. You can't shut down communication.
Right.
I don't think we're providing a specific value. If someone asks, how do you determine something, or what is, and right now we don't have the answers, we don't have the material, but if someone said, can you explain what a grade 3 is on a whatever? That's something you, in theory, you could ask, or, if we just don't have the data right now.
Right, but we all have the same answer. I think what's happening right now is we're in this mess because we don't have the answers, and we're giving you answers that we think might be right. and they're not.
But that's not ex parte.
No.
But that's, what I'm asking is,
Well, you're not
when
missing,
you, if you make a decision that, no, I'm not gonna change it, then obviously communication is ex parte.
This is the ex parte is when there is an application for an abatement. It does not say that a request for information.
prior to the application.
But if there is an application for an abatement,
Which
then
should not happen very often.
But number two would be, we don't always know when there's an application for abatement.
Well, that should be the first question we ask then, certainly. But I don't think anyone's intentionally trying to violate that with what's going on right now.
Thank you for the clarification. No abatement, not ex parte. Okay.
information is not, a request for information is not an ex parte communication as far as I can see. But if there is an abatement, then
And back and forth, what do you think with an individual assessor is not ex parte conversation either. When you do talk, oh yeah, you are.
but if you have an abatement before me and I know that you have an abatement, then
That's always the way I've,
And it would be appropriate for anyone else to say, I cannot answer that question because you have an abatement filed, and it ceases the dialogue at that moment. So, but up until then, I think it's appropriate for someone to ask, specifically since we don't have an employed assessor at the town, we have to support the community one way or another.
for your question, I told you had to get ready for it. For you, there's, and I forget the number, it's 401.1 and it's 400.5 or something. The 0.5 gives you the 5 days. One simply says that a request to view information, and I used to be able to read specs verbatim from my head, but I can't anymore, that you can make a request and the extreme version is, I'd like to see my property cap. Okay, give me a FOIA request.
right.
I want to see what was given to you. The clear answer is, I can't do that at this moment. But if I want to walk in and look at a public record, it is not a FOIA request. That must be done right then. For paragraph .1, not jumping all the way up to .5.
Right.
Readily available without interrupting the workflow.
And what I'm suggesting is that in order for future reference, that there be a notation that that request was made. And it doesn't have to be, you have to fill this out before I can talk to you. It means that somewhere we need to know that the request was made.
A request for copies. If I want to stop the workflow and get copies, if I want you to do work, that is a FOIA request number 5. 5 days period. If I will go in and say, I want to see a public record, and it's not interrupting the workflow, I better be given the public record and not told to get a FOIA request out.
Did you have another comment?
No. I agreed with something he said earlier. And I forgot what it was.
Ditto, just say ditto.
That's why we go that.
Well, one would find one in good company if you agree with Mike about many things, but perhaps not.
You'll also be in the minority.
Is there other public comment? I think at this point it would be awesome to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Thank you, everybody.